Welcome back to Danny Rants. Today we have probably the most special guest we've ever had in this podcast. And that guest goes by the name of Danny Rants. So I am celebrating my 50th podcast. You're about to watch me under the microscope. I'm about to get interviewed by an old friend of mine and a colleague and an apprentice. He was a young apprentice of mine, one of the many successful that came on to go and kill it in different parts of life. I've got Mr. Clay Thar here. He was going to put me in the hot seat. How are you, my bro?
I'm very well. I thought you were about to give me one of the greatest wrap-ups of all time, but unfortunately it's for yourself.
Finally.
Actually did a bit of research before we came here. We actually did this June of 2020 when you first had a podcast, and we were having a laugh about COVID when it first started.
Well, actually, this is a little bit more of a tidbit for you. It was actually 3 days before everything closed down. So
Legit.
It was on the Wednesday. It might have gone up in June, but it was the Wednesday before the Friday was the day that D-Day, I guess.
Yeah.
And I remember we were joking about like having a good old fashioned laugh about it. And then 3 days later, my world comes fucking crumbling down.
Yep. And we literally got locked down for 2-3 years. So
Crazy part of my life.
Dan
and
Andrews,
yours.
if you're watching,
Fuck you.
see you next Tuesday. Awesome. Well, why don't we get started? I mean, a lot of people obviously know a lot about you, but there's probably a lot that they don't know about. So maybe just start where you kind of grew up. Like, what was your, I guess, childhood like, and kind of what led you from where you were there to where you are now?
So starting from the start, parents super young, have me at like 18. I'm living in a place called Glen Waverley, which is southeast Melbourne. Basically, they get divorced pretty early on. Pretty wild life to start with. So my parents are young and they're in a fair bit of trouble. Like they're not the model sort of parents that you traditionally would think, I would say. And my uncles and stuff, a lot of them were really kind of in the deep end. Funnily enough, this is kind of like a wild yarn, but I guess that's my thing. I don't even know if you know this, but I had two uncles from the one auntie, so I won't say their names, and they both went to jail for murder. This is a true yarn. And basically, they committed the same murder. So they were co-offenders, and my auntie dated one of them prior to them going to jail, and then she dated the other one when he came out of jail. So it's probably a good way of reflection of how I grew up. Like that was sort of my norm, right? So I was sort of in the mix and of that, like that style of life. Like those things didn't really shock me. People going to jail, you know, people getting raided. It was from an early age, that was stuff that was happening in my life. We ended up moving to a place called Broadford with my stepdad, with meets my mum. It's like a small country town in Victoria. Lived there. It was kind of cool, to be honest. Like it was a small town mentality, like wandered around, did fuck all. And we could just do whatever we wanted all the time. Lots of adventuring, you know, creeks, mountains, fucking playing with scorpions, all kinds of weird shit like that. And then I hit about 12, 13 and basically start getting into that life. So I was like what they call a townie. And like a townie is someone who doesn't live on a farm, right? Have you heard that term before?
Yeah, I always call my mates townies.
So basically, the people who live in these small towns, they're fucking rough towns, right? And the reason why that is that you kind of live in a country town, normally in town, if you don't have a lot of money or, you know, you're a single mom or maybe running away from something, especially in that town. And Broadford was famous originally, and a lot of people who are older than me would remember it because it used to run a music festival, believe it or not, that was ran by the Hells Angels back in the day. So I lived in this little town. It was a very old one. It was off a highway. There was no like through road. So there was no real reason to live there other than to visit it, sorry, I should say, but to live there. So lived there, hit 13. And then because I'm young, I'm sort of looking for something to do. There's nothing to do in town. So we're kind of mucking around, you know, experimenting, I would call it.
Explain to people like what Broadford actually looks like, because if you've never been there, you might think country town like Bendigo or Shepparton or something like that. It's not like that at all.
Nah, please be there.
I've been there.
I've dragged him up there.
It's pretty shit. Sorry if you live there, but it sucks. But talk to us, like set the scene of what it actually looks like.
Yeah, so it's basically a town that used to be on the old Hume Highway, and then when the new Hume Highway came, it cut it off. So it's basically no one visits it. It's just this town that sort of sits there off the Hume Freeway, and unless you're visiting someone that lives there or you live there yourself, you're not going there. It's two pubs, an IGA, and a corner store. There's a couple of fish and chip shops.
Basically on just like one
strip,
one main street.
Yeah, when I lived there was like maybe 7 or 8 shops, and that was it.
Yep.
And there was 2,500 people that lived there, and it was not that far from the city. It was like 45 minutes. So it wasn't like a country full deep in the middle of nowhere town. It was sort of like where people that couldn't afford to live in the suburbs would live. Like that's sort of what the space was. And because of that, it taught me a lot of good things. Like taught me how to sell cigarettes. Taught me how to punch on real well because we lived in this small town. So that was sort of like, probably I'd say most of the youth pastime was brawling one another. And then because of that, that kind of filtered into school and stuff. And I was just living pretty shit. Like I wasn't doing that well. At school, I wasn't doing that well. Out of school, and then I was just sort of going down a one-way track, and it was probably going to repeat the actions that I'd sort of watched as I grew up. And I was sort of going down that way. I was doing illegal stuff, like I was doing break and enters and all that kind of shit, and just trying to, like, realistically, not to defend myself, but I was trying to make a buck, yeah, because I didn't have a lot of money, so I was always walking around with, and now I sound like a fucking old soppy dude, but I literally had holes in my shoes. Or never was able to wear brand clothes or whatever. So we were really, really poor, my family. So I started to, like, sell cigarettes, and I was doing things, odds and ends, to kind of, like, raise cash, I guess, to, like, be able to buy things that other people had, like, and it, you know, I look back at it now and probably regret it, but it was definitely the best way to kind of explain it would be that I was a victim of circumstance. So everyone was doing that around the area. It seemed normal, and I didn't know any better. I never had any sort of other mentors or role models that were doing different things that I could be like, oh, cool, I'll do what that guy is, which probably makes my story more wild, right? Because I didn't have a guy who was a multimillionaire. I was like, I'm going to chase his dream. So there, get kicked out of school for fighting, would you believe? And then I can't get into any local schools. So none of the schools around me will take me. And the reason why they won't take me is because they knew, like, I had a reputation, I guess, of being an idiot around the area. So when I'd go there, I remember literally I had a coordinator from Broadford Sec, which is where I went, and I tried to go to CML Tech, it was called. So it was like it's even shittier school than the one I went to. I think we were the 5th poorest school in Victoria or some shit. And then I went there, and he saw me walking in to go do the interview to come in, and he literally laughed out loud. He's like, mate, you're not coming here. So I was like, fuck. So what I did was I sat around and smoked King Kongs for about 6 months, and there was not a lot of job opportunity there. And then started to fight with my family, and then I had to move. So I moved to the city. So that's where my story begins back and picks back up in the southeast of Melbourne. So I go down there and I get into a school because by law, they had to take me because I was under 16. So I had to get zoned. So I tried all 3 schools, couldn't get in, and they let me in, long story short. Then I sort of fall into the same shit. Like I've just fallen into trouble, find other kids that are doing the same sort of stuff, and it's history repeating itself. And then what I decide is that I'm sort of doing some good stuff and some bad stuff. So I'm doing some stupid shit, and then I'm doing some good stuff like washing cars and like selling cigarettes. It's not that it's great, but it's still, you know, taught me what I knew. And selling stuff to kids, like canteen stuff they didn't sell in the canteen, out of my locker, shit like that. And that stuff I'm not getting in trouble for, and I'm making money. And then the other stuff I am getting in trouble for constantly, and it's like kind of causing me grief. And then I was like, well, I think I might start to lean into that stuff more. So from a really early age, it was kind of weird. But like for me, business is like, I think life in general is simple. Like this is kind of like a weird kind of catchphrase that I sort of say to people, but people overcomplicate life. That's my opinion. So realistically, life's not that hard. Like just try to smile more than you frown. You know, like find someone that you love, that you get along with pretty well, make good friends, and fucking have a laugh. Like that's life in my opinion, right? And that's how I've always lived it. When it comes to business, that's the same as me. So like I'd buy a cigarette and I'd buy a pack for $10. I'd pull out 20, I could sell them for $2. I'd make $10. Every single business I've ever done since, but it doesn't matter if it's labor, creative, alcohol, clubbing, tickets, whatever. It's the same fucking metric. So I don't understand how you go to school for 4 years. It's pretty fucking basic. Like I could teach you with 1 pack of cigarettes. I could teach you how to run a business. So that's how I sort of took that and turned it into what I eventually ended up doing. But finished school, and then I get into nightclubs. So that's like the next sort of story arc. So I whipped through that pretty quickly, but like that's sort of pre-Danny Rants.
Yeah. So when you move back from the country town to, you know, back to the suburbs, did you have any idea in your head of like what you wanted to do or where you wanted to go with your life? Did you have any interests, like knowing you obviously weren't interested in picking up tools, because I've seen you use a power tool and yeah, watch out. But what were you interested in? Like where was your life heading at that stage?
I would honestly say this, and I know it sounds cliche and whatever, but I'd say prison. Like that's where I was sort of heading towards. I'm like, oh, this is easy. It's easy cash and earn. And all I wanted to do was have fun all the time. So for me, I was like, if I could do the least amount of work and have the most amount of fun, that was sort of where I was heading towards. But I didn't even know, man. Like I honestly was like, all I knew when my mates were going to become electricians or plumbers, or they're going on to university, not many of them from where I grew up, but one did. But I was like, this is not for me. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. I was super creative, obviously. I was good at adapting and sort of shifting and changing and rah. Wasn't the worst at talking shit. But the other thing too is I talk quick and I swear a lot. So back then, any form of media was impossible for me because I was like, now times have changed, but like I was the opposite of what someone would be looking for in that sort of role. So maybe I could have been a radio host or something like that. But again, I was not shaped for that kind of role back then. So I don't know. All I knew was I loved music. I loved having a good time. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was living day to day. And because I was living day to day, I was probably making fucking stupid decisions a lot because it was easy for me to make a stupid decision because I was just trying to get past the next 4 days, you know? Like, and then because of that and all those stupid decisions that I made, I actually ended up being homeless at one point, which is kind of a crazy story in itself. I got bounced around a lot. I lived out of a garbage bag legitimately. Like I never ever got more clothes or more things in a garbage bag because I moved all the time. So I lived with auntie and uncles, nans and pas, auntie and uncles, you know, dad, mum, whatever. So I was moving all the time. I think I lived in 16 houses before I was 18 or 20 or something like that. And I used to just take this garbage bag because I wouldn't even like really undo it and put it into a room because I knew there was only a small amount of time before I'd have to go again. And it wasn't necessarily things that I was doing. It was just like, that was the nature of the beast. Like I was sleeping in lounge rooms. I was sleeping in studies. I was doing all that sort of stuff. So then eventually my nan and pa went away and I was sort of spending all my money on weekends out and I couldn't afford the board. And then I was like, knew she was going away. And I was like, oh, I'll just sneak in when she's there, she's away. So I sneaked in. I was in there for like 2 weeks. And then my uncle came through to fucking fix something in the house and he caught me in there and he's like, what are you doing here? I was like, just did the runner. Like I was like young and dumb and did the runner. So then I had nowhere to live. So I had like my nan and pa away for 6 months. So I spent like probably about 8 or 9 weeks where I was like staying at mates' houses, couch surfing, or I was staying up all night and sleeping in my car at night. So I was sort of effectively homeless. And I just met the girl who was my now wife. And I was sort of mixing between my friends and her house and sleeping there. And then lucky for me, her parents sort of took me in and gave me some foundations. And I guess once I had that second chance is what I'd call it. I had that second chance where I'm like, okay, well, everything you're doing is you're fucking making a mess. Can't hold a job. Can't even fucking, you know, live in one house for longer than 3 or 4 months. Something needs to change. And I think that was like the pivotal point when my head just went boom. I need to change my life and I have to figure out how I'm going to do this. I can't just keep living day to day and because I'm either going to end up dead, in jail or fucking homeless, which I've already been there. I've been rock bottom. So I then used that sort of mentality that I had when I was doing all these little hustles and thought, how can I make these more long-term? And that's sort of how I fell into nightclubs.
And at the time when you were kind of bouncing around, you moved back to the area, what kind of jobs were you doing? Like obviously you had some odd jobs and then maybe some illegal jobs that you were kind of running on the side, but like what were you actually doing in that time bouncing around? How were you like earning a living?
Yeah, so I was doing different things. So like one was I worked at Safeway for a little when I was young. The other one was I was working for my uncle. So my uncle, which I reckon is where you're leading me. So my uncle had a company where he would clean towels from brothels. So I'd go in the morning, wake up in this shitty little van 3 days a week, and I'd go collect all the dirty towels from the brothels, take them back to him. He'd clean them, and then in the afternoon I'd take them back. So I was doing that for about 3 months through Southeast. And then I was doing other shit too. Like I don't know if you know about this, but my dad used to sell like the stuff that goes in the florist arrangements that aren't flowers. So it's all like the weeds and the leaves and whatever. So I was like out with secretaries just like hacking off people's front yard camellia plants and like blue gum and then like wrapping them up with elastic bands and selling them to florists. So, and then on top of that, I was, that was basically it. Like there was obviously other hustles I was doing, you know, I was selling tickets, but I was doing all these things. So I was like out stealing plants literally and then selling them to florists. I was out delivering towels to brothels and then I was selling tickets on the weekend, you know, like I was doing whatever I fucking could do to make a buck. And then I'd sort of sometimes make $100, sometimes make $400-500. But at that time, sometimes with these little hustles I was doing on the side, I was making more money than my mates were in apprenticeships. And at the time, obviously it wasn't long-term, but I'm like, you know, I can just keep fucking hustling like this till I die. Like that was my thought process.
Yeah. So obviously like you were delivering cum towels and then you've gone into, how did you end up into nightclubs? Like what started you going there and how did that kind of evolve into becoming like an actual job for you?
So I was partying heaps, like that's uno numero. So all these hustles that I was doing, and the reason why I probably couldn't keep a job was that I didn't want to not go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So like the idea of like working a normal job Monday to Friday didn't really work for me because I had better things to do and I wanted to party, right? And I've said it before and I'll say it again. One of my things was at the time when everyone was growing up, I fell in love with a thing called ecstasy. And I was doing a lot of that at the time. So I was like, how do I figure out a way to do more of this and less of the normal shit? Which is sort of stupid, but it's the truth. It's kind of got me to where I am now. And then I was selling tickets to everything, so events and whatnot. And this is probably a bit of a crazy yarn, which again, I don't even know if you know this, but I was selling tickets to everything, and I always knew a lot of people because I moved a lot. So I played at a different football club, went to different schools. I had different sort of jobs, so I always knew different people from different areas. I always knew more people than other people did because I was always on the move. I was like the Victorian number plate back in the day. And then so I started to get tickets for everything. So I would like have door lists and I'd get tickets for anything. And it was never something that I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. It was more that I was like, oh, I can make $30, I can make $50 here and there. And then I come up with this genius idea. So this genius idea was, at the time I was obviously buying narcotics. And I'd go get my K from one guy and I'd go get my fucking flippers from another guy. And then I was like, well, these guys are selling gear. Why would I not give them the tickets to these events and then get them to sell the tickets? So then I'd collect all these tickets, and I might get tickets from like Room 680 or Evolution or TFU or whatever, and I'd get like the smorgasbord because I had the connection to these promoters. And then I'd go to these people that I knew were selling gear and I'd be like, hey, do you want to sell these tickets too? Like it's an extra $5 you'll make off a pop. And they're like, yeah, done. So I was sort of going back on this Friday night to go pick up my 10-pack. And then these guys would have like ticket money for me and they'd sell anywhere between 10 to 30. So I was selling like 150, sometimes like 200 tickets to shows that I didn't really have much to do with. At this time, I didn't realize it was a job path. I wasn't even thinking about that. It was just like me coming up with a hustle. Like I was too busy out there stealing eucalyptus leaves to worry about that. But basically I started to make like $500-600. And then what happened was I was sort of doing this for multiple venues. And then I'd said that I was going to not work at one. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it this weekend. Or this not weekend, this public holiday it was. And they're like, oh, no. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm going away or whatever the fuck the reason was. And then that freak out is what really caused me to get into that job. So I was like, wow, that guy's wigging out. And then he offered me 20%. This is actually TFU originally. It was called Dirty Days. And then I was like, oh, like there's value in this. And then it all kind of pieced together. So I kind of, everything that I'd ever learned, I was like, oh, wait, they're making $20. I'm only taking $5. They're doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, there's heaps of coin in this, but I've just got to figure out how to do it. So then I sort of started to work with them. And I still couldn't work it out, but I made networks and connections and DJs because back in the day, you couldn't just like go on Instagram, message a DJ and be like, oh, hey, or find their email for their booking address. You had to like know them. So I curated my first show at a place called Circus in Melbourne under a guy called Pommy who still works there now. So I got in contact with him, don't even remember how. He gave me the date around a Friday night. And then I knew a couple of DJs that were like all different genres and like friends of friends and stuff. Got on the landline to them and I booked in a show. It was like a odd mob of artists, like real random ones, random artists. And then put the show on, gave tickets to like my mates' girlfriends, and well, my mates had a lot of girlfriends. Friends of friends and family and whatever. And I sold 300 tickets. And that night, after I paid all the DJs, paid the door girl, went home, I made $2,500. And that was the most I'd ever made ever. Like it's probably the most money I'd ever had in my hands. And I've actually got a flick of it somewhere, which I keep threatening to get out. Like I've got to get Sarah to find it, but it was me laying it out on the ground and like rolling around in it just in my jocks. And I was like, I've fucking made it. Like this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I can do whatever the fuck I want. No one can stop me. I can get tattoos. I can party all weekend and I can make money out of this. I was like, this is my dream job. So at that minute, I then took it really, really seriously. And it went from being something that was just one of my hustles to my actual hustle. And then I started to like run shows, you know, like obviously, you know, where that leads, but there was points where I was running hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows. So over a period of a year, and I was doing tens of thousands of people some weekends. So I took it pretty fucking serious and dialed in. The first 3 years was definitely more about just like funding my antics and my party life. But eventually I stopped that and winded back down and I turned into a very successful career and bought houses out of it and, you know, traveled the world with it. And I've turned it into something that a lot of people would have looked at as something that could have only been part-time as a hobby, but I turned it into an empire.
Definitely. So what age were you when you first ran your own event? Like do you remember what age you were when, you went out on your own and did your first event?
Almost 19. So I was 18. So when people are like, you've ever had a real job? I'm like, not really, no.
Yeah. So back then, $2,500 at 18, 19. What are you, 58 now? So that
close.
So that $2,500 would have been, you know, massive money back then. Just obviously from selling cigarettes, you know, you can kind of double your money to doing that and saying, hey, if I get 300 of my friends in the one spot, like I can actually make life-changing money out of this. At 19, what happened after you were 19? So you obviously ran your first event and then like how does the story kind of evolve to that becoming, full time running hundreds of events? Like you've gone and done your first. How do you go to doing 50, 100, 200?
Yeah, so really from that point, I went to all those places I was selling tickets to, and I was like, you got to share the pot now. So I went to them and I sort of worked out different deals. At the time, I remember I worked at a call center for like 5 days, which is kind of funny. And then I think it was like, I went to work on the Wednesday. I was meant to go in. I remember being at the train station. I called the guy and he was like, "Oh, can you come in at 3 instead?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not coming in." He's like, "Oh, today." And I was like, "Ever." So I just quit on the spot. I never went back to a normal job. But so I quit on that time. And then I went to a club, Billboard in the city, a famous family called the Udorovics run it. And I was like, "Hey, let me run your side room. I'll take the photos. I'll bring the crew in." I was doing like 100 people there at the time. And on a weekly on my guest list and / promoter host, whatever. And then they're like, "Yeah, but I want $500 a week." And again, going back to what my mates were getting paid. My mates were getting paid like 180, 250, and they're working 5 days a week as apprentices. So I was like, sweet, that's my base. Then I went to, back then, TFU, and I went to different venues I was working with. And I was like, I will now want a cut and share of these parties because I'm selling majority of these tickets. And then I teamed up with my business partner for fucking 15 years, Kyle Hand, who works at Hardware. He's gone on to do amazing things. And we were best teenage mates. Like we used to play footy together, hang out, run amok, go to parties and whatnot, like house parties and stuff. We ran a legal party on Chapel Street for an after Deb where we sold the piss at the top of General Pants, on Chapel Street. And we were selling the alcohol and stuff. So that was our first sort of like baptism of fire when we were young. And probably what gave us the taste of being able to do this was running that illegal party. But then we went on to join forces. So then he had his own connections. I had my own connection. He'd run a party himself. We kind of came together and we created this company called Loud Entertainment. And anyone who lived in that era or that party would definitely remember it. It was sort of like, I'd say, the premium brand for a long, long time. We had competitors, but we were the first sort of to market. And then once I did that, I was working for them. And then I realized, well, I don't really need to work for these guys. I do it myself. So then I started running my own brands, making my own stuff. So I had like Fornicated, Debbie Does, Love Lucy back in the day. There was all these different brand names. And then fucking Lockdown Jail Raid, which was another sick one. And then I was getting the retainer at the venue and I was like working out what they were getting paid. So I was like, well, why can't I do this myself? So I literally walked up the street at the time. So this is my first like weekly night. And it went on to become one of the most iconic Melbourne kind of nights when it comes to that Melbourne sound genre, that follows on. But I literally went up to Corova. It was called Corova. It was the top of Burke Street. And I knocked on the door. And then the guy who came out was this guy with a giant afro, a guy called Moody, like a Lebanese dude. And he was a security guard who beat the fuck out of me and kicked me down the stairs at TFU one night because I was playing up. So as soon as he opened up the door, I was like, you're fucking kidding me. Like he's standing there. So I had a chat with him, very awkward conversation, walked in. I said, look, I'm doing all this shit. I want to run a Friday night here. I got no back and got no cash, but I've got a fire on my belly and I want to have a crack. So we do that and I basically enlist a bunch of freaks from Southeast because at the time when I left TFU, because I was running their Fridays at the point, they actually got pretty upset with me. So they like cock blocked all those DJs that I used to work with, which is like your Nick Coleman's, Spacey Spaces, Orchestrated at the time, Adam Butterstein, perhaps the list goes on. So I had to go find another group of kids, bring them into Corova, and I start this Friday. And that Friday went on to it ran for like 5 years, but it was a little venue that held 200 people. I'd say majority of famous DJs from that point played their first gig there or had a residency there. And we were doing we used to get a line so big there that the police used to give us fines because there was so many people on the street. So we couldn't even fit that amount of people in the club then on the street. And that little joint was a little place that could. It was like, we'd have this upstairs and there was all these guys, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, but all these guys playing in this little kind of boiler room setup in this tiny little fucking room in Burke Street. And we used to smoke in there. Even when they banned the smoking laws, we didn't give a fuck because no security guard could get up there. It was just so busy. So everyone just punched gas in there and the guards were like, stop smoking. There was no rules in this joint whatsoever. And that was where I sort of started. But I started to make legit money then. So I was doing, 300-400 heads. We were staying open at 7 a.m. in the morning. I was making $4K a week. And then all these other little events, that meant I could fund and bring internationals in and buy bigger artists and do bigger venues. And that's where it snowballed for me. So like when I had that kind of pot of coin, then I was able to do Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. Then I was working out of suburbs. I was running stuff in Melton to Orange Whip. I was running 4 nights a week in the city. I was fucking doing psytrance parties. I was doing R&B parties. I was doing deep house parties. I was doing every single genre that existed. So I really kind of figured out really quickly that how to blow this the fuck up. And to be honest, it was branding, which obviously is something that throughout my whole story is like a integral part of it. But the branding component, I was really, really good at creating brands for people. And I was really, really good at curating lineups because I fucking loved music. So that's sort of the part where I get to snowball. And then money that I wish I could see that money still today. I had fucking no shit safes of cash. Like I used to just grab handfuls, wads of cash at a time every time I'd leave the house, and I used to blow it on everything, man. Like I remember one day spending $500 on Tekken in Box Hill, just playing with like random people that would roll in, just competing with them because I didn't give a fuck. Like money, easy come, easy go. Like I never seen anyone with cash, so I would just buy shit. Bought a boat once, used it for like 2-3 months, and then it broke down. Never fixed it. Just got rid of it. Didn't even sell it. You know, like that. I was just spending money like I was going to die tomorrow. But in my defense, when I was young, I generally didn't think I was going to live past 28. So I was living my life like that.
And that is kind of like the life of the promoter. Obviously, I was involved in it with a short period of time, but you run this weekly night. I mean, when you first started, there was probably no card on the door, I'm assuming. Everyone was paying cash. You're doing 200-300 people every Friday night, probably more. They're paying $15-20 entry. You're taking wads of cash home. Sorry, ATO. And like, you kind of think it's going to last forever. And then you start doing all these other venues. But like, obviously you had a lot of success and there's a lot of people in the industry that have done similar things. But have you seen people that have, you know, kind of lived this lavish lifestyle while they've had early success and then ended up like in a place where they've gone bankrupt, or like there's obviously massive horror stories, but tell me some of like those of people that you kind of looked up to, or you don't have to say their name, that kind of just live that lavish lifestyle and spend all their money and then all of a sudden it just ends.
I'd say it's 50%, if not more. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of famous stories. There's obviously a guy who's passed away now, Spirit Birasene, who made millions of dollars. He told me a story about one time, the first $1 million he made, he put into a bathtub and he jacked off in it. And then that guy, not long afterwards, was bankrupt, right? So he's one of multiple people that have done that. But I'd say 50% of all promoters are rich and then they're broke. So it's so common to watch a guy flying around in fucking jets and doing all this wild stuff and like traveling around the world, and then 3 years later, they're working at a venue as a booker for $300 a week. So it's a part of the lifestyle. I think it attracts people that are like crazy. And because of that, you're the top of the pile. And then by the end, it's like, I'll use a quote from a famous promoter in Melbourne called Boris Radman. When you're at the top of the game, you got to be an octopus. Everyone wants to shake your hands. But by the end of it, you're like a leper. No one will even give you a buck, you know? Like, so you got to start at the beginning, you got to start. But it's like, that's the lifestyle of, and like the good ones, the good promoters, they figure out a way around it because it's like a roller coaster. So even me, like I went up, down, round and round. I was rich, broke. Like it was a part of the life, but I was able to live through those lows to continue to start back up again. A lot of people can't, man. They crash. And a lot of other ones drugs. I'm not going to lie about that. A lot of people just burn out because they take too much gear and they fucking end up in rehab or they cook themselves. Like that's normally, you're either going to become a real estate agent, you're going to cook yourself to the past existence, or you're going to become a fucking super successful entrepreneur. Like they're the three sort of paths for a promoter.
Yep. And obviously, you know, doing multiple nights, like can you just list some of the nights that you ran like across Melbourne over your time period? Because I know there was obviously heaps, but what were some of like the staple weeklies that you ran and went to create and run for a long period of time?
So I've done events at every single venue in Melbourne, from like Revolver to Billboard to you name it. I've done events there. I'm not saying they've all been successful, but a lot of them were. But the ones that I ran that were like iconic was Faked Hits, which had a lot to do with the beginning of the house, which is like your Dom Dollars. We had guys like What's So Not there. We had guys like Peking Duck there. So that was sort of like a bit of a breeding ground for Melbourne for that Australian house genre. Those guys went, their success had nothing to do with us, but it was like that was the first place they called home. Second to that was Clover Fridays, which was sort of like one of the birthplaces of the Melbourne sound, which went on to blow up all over the world. I also did shit, like, you know, I worked at Orange Whip for years. I ran Code. I obviously owned Empire, which I ran the Fridays and Saturdays there. Some of the events I did was like Debbie Does Disco, as I said before, Love Lucy, Lockdown, and Tomorrow Never Comes, we used to do artists like Dubfire to Adana Twins to, you know, all these other artists. Fuck man, the list, I could be here for an hour. Like there's the amount of events I've done, I've forgotten how many I've done, but I also did internationals. I did stupid amounts of internationals. I did Afrojack, Deadmau5, you know, like I did Laidback Luke, but I also did Sven Vath, I did Patrick Topping, I'll keep going, but it's like, you name a fucking, I did Vinny Vici, like you name a genre, I've worked in it and I've done the space. Then I went on to do fucking Polynesian gang rap, and I was one of the biggest promoters of that, probably the biggest promoter of that in Australia. And I did everyone from Hooligan House to Young and Lips and everyone literally but one, and not 1-4. So I've done Amy Shark at a kids festival. Like I think one of the things that I've done as a promoter is that a lot of guys get into like a niche. I never had a niche. I just done hundreds and hundreds of events, and I did it everywhere from Melbourne to New Zealand to Gold Coast to Sydney. I was doing invasions. I had record labels. Like the list goes on, but it's sort of hard to pinpoint the most iconic nights because I just did so much. I can't even remember them myself.
Yeah. So obviously you've had a lot of DJs like from Australia plus internationals. What's kind of the most memorable DJs that you've had or had at your parties, your top 2 or 3 that kind of you look back and go, holy fuck, I can't believe this is happening?
Yeah, I reckon number 1, but it's like more in reflection because he wasn't big, but was like Deadmau5. You know, being able to say that, well, people drop it all the time where they're like, oh, you know, you did Deadmau5. When I did Deadmau5, we did it at TFU on a Sunday, which was on Burke Street. We didn't even sell 200 tickets. It was fucking a flop. So he only had one song called Untitled at the time, which is an absolute banger. But we bought him out off the back of that. I didn't even think I went to the show because I knew it flopped and I was like, fuck that. So I was somewhere else, I'm pretty sure, right? But that one's a good one to reflect back on and say because it's always like, that's that. People look at it and go, wow. And then the list goes on. Like I did, obviously Afrojack went on to do massive things. But again, I did him early days when he did cool. So it wasn't at the level. So people use these as like hero points to my story. But the reality of it is I've always done a good job of being with artists or booking artists or being a part of artists' journey when they're bubbling. Like they're just not even bubbling, it's before bubbling. So it looks great on a resume, but the reality of it is, and I think it still looks great on my resume because I've been able to pick these guys early on that go on and blow up. Like the list of people that I've worked with that have blown up is fucking so large. It's pages and pages and pages. And I think that's a credit to my ears, you know. But Dom Dollar, first show at Empire, which you were involved in, we did that one just as he blew up and we sold 1,600 and broke all records. So being a part of that was pretty cool because he's the biggest Australian artist and musician, well, electronic artist basically ever in Australia. Obviously very close to his team. Watching them go to 1,600 people at Empire to now doing 200,000 plus people at festivals all across the country. Being a part of that story and journey has been a fucking awesome experience to watch from the sidelines, but being able to have seen it at an early stage. And then probably my favorite really show that I reckon I had of someone, again, who was bubbling, went on to be massive, Patrick Topping at Revs. So we had him early days, didn't sell it out, 200-300 people, show on a Sunday. He was an up and coming artist. No one knew who he was. I promoted the show off a Dropbox link. So we had 5 of his songs and that's what we used to do. We used to like get these artists and put them out and then we'd send a Dropbox link to our friends and try to get them invested in the songs. So we used a Patrick Topping one and some of those songs went on to become his biggest tunes, but we were sort of promoting them, this show via a Dropbox link, had him and he just fucking smacked it, went and kicked on at Circus and whatnot. But that was probably one of my favorite DJ sets at the time. It was just, everything came together. It was like great music, house was bubbling at the time. There was this whole kind of, you know, new scene where people would cheer before the build-ups, which I was really getting into. And obviously Revolver, iconic venue, but that's probably my favorite of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So obviously you've also worked at like pretty much every single venue in Melbourne. What is like your most iconic event or memory at a specific venue or a place that you ran a party? Like obviously there's been heaps of different concepts that you've ran. What has been like your top 3 that you've done?
Okay, I've got it. So the first one was I did Booker Shade, right? I did Booker Shade, 2 sold out shows at Prince. And for anyone who's from my era, Booker Shade that was it. Like In White Rooms, biggest fucking dance song from that thing. I think it's won Reminisce 3 or 4 times, maybe even more. So I got access to do them at Prince. And Prince to me was the first venue I ever fell in love with. So it used to be the home of One Love. So I was like doing Booker Shade there at One Love, or Prince, which is the venue that I first fell in love with nightclubs at. Was iconic to me. So that's probably stands alone as probably one of my favorite shows. I think a lot of people who are watching this who went there would agree that was their favorite show as a punter, those 2 shows. Second to that, we did like a legal rave at a place called in Collingwood, which was above the Dirt Cheap Books on Hoddle Street. So we did that and that was with the late Ajax, who was an iconic guy from Bang Gangs. So we did that show there. And when I say legal, the reason why was that we used a catering license. So effectively, we were having a big party of 1,500 people with some pizzas, but really it was rave, right? So we built this thing with out of pallets, and we built this stage, and it was very like industrial. It had like the oil bins and all that sort of shit, and it was super fucking cool space. Ran that, 1,500 people. Unfortunately, my friends get into a massive brawl at the end of it and completely shut down the event. So we're never able to use that space again. I think we actually fucked that dude's license, unfortunately. And then luckily enough, no one got in trouble because we knew one of the cops. He used to be a venue manager and he basically told us to run, but that's another story in itself. That'd be my second probably favorite show. And then the orchestrated one. Like, so for me, having so much to do with those boys, you know, our stories, They align and they kind of like weave through. I think they credit a lot of the success to Loud, the company that I worked with, and I credit a lot of my success to them. Like they headlined more shows than anybody else that ever headlined any of my shows or any other artist. So coming together with them, doing that show at Riva, celebrating like what we created with 5,500 people, from these guys that started making this music in these tiny little rooms that held 100 people to then go on and do 5,500 people at Riva was fucking monumental to me. Like it was so iconic and like I cried, you know, like that's how emotional this stuff makes me and that's how much I love it. That I remember watching them play Longest Road at the start and I like literally had a tear. And to give you an idea, I didn't cry at my own wedding.
It was a great day. It was a very sad day. Great orchestrated party. We've got to do it again.
Yeah, fuck. Hopefully.
Obviously, the nightclub scene, there's crazy shit that happens all the time. Like, and people think you've got crazy stories and they think, how the fuck does this guy have so many stories? It's because every time you're somewhere or like crazy shit happens in nightlife all the time and you're out, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you're amongst crazy people and all this crazy shit and people in this industry. What's one of the wildest stories that you've ever kind of experienced that you haven't told on a podcast before?
So I had to think about this because obviously a lot of my stuff I can't talk about. So there's so many of my yarns and stories that will never see the light of day. And like Aiden, my producer, he's lucky enough to see them. But basically every time I do an interview, there's a 20-minute debrief afterwards with the fucking R18 plus stuff. So I myself have a lot of them. But this is a story I haven't told. I've told a portion of it. So it's a story that if someone wants to go check it out, they can find it on my YouTube. But basically, I did a show in New Zealand with a Polynesian rap group that were affiliated to a gang in Melbourne. And I put it in the middle of another gang's territory in New Zealand, unknowingly to myself. Wasn't aware. This erupts. There's a full-blown gang war on this street called K Road. And there's about 100 police. They shut it down. It's on the news. It makes the fucking media. It's this big upset and it's all my fault. And I had to deal with it. And I had to basically negotiate the gangs and the police out of this situation. And I luckily lived. But there's a part beforehand that I've sort of said I'd never tell because a lot of the people who were a part of this story are still active. Like they're still active members of gangs and whatnot. But I've decided for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to tell that part. So again, go educate yourself if you want to about this story, but it was a wild fucking moment and it was insane. And I literally pinched myself that I was alive afterwards. But beforehand, there's this part. So as we're going there, we had a guy hit me up. This guy hit me up and he was a promoter for a venue across the road and he wanted to do an after party with one of the artists that I was bringing over for the show that and ended up imploding and fucking making the news. And I was like, yeah, all good. So it was like 3K fee, whatever, 15-minute show, which was kind of normal, like an after party fee. And I basically, a couple of days beforehand, I started to get like the heebie-jeebies because someone had written a comment like, you know, don't do that. So I was already starting to get like my spidey senses were going off. And then I looked at the guy's picture and I knew obviously my mate or the guy was at the show, I knew he was affiliated to gangs or in gang, but didn't really think much of it because in Melbourne and Sydney, the police are pretty aggressive to that shit. So like, even though you always have these constant like threats, like there's times where I did shows in Melbourne where I was warned that my artists were going to get shot or killed. And we just navigate that, you know, like, and then, but if something goes wrong or there's a brawl, police are just there. In New Zealand, the coppers don't even have guns. So like, it's a different world. Street gangs are a lot more prevalent. People wearing patches and shit, stuff you don't see in Australia. Like, it's just another fucking world. It's actually scary over there, I reckon. Anyway, so I look at this guy's profile who booked this artist and I noticed that he's patched up. He's in this a New Zealand gang. And I was like, no, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't want to be in another country. I'm already with these guys covered in tattoos. Like, I've been living this life for 2 years with these guys and, you know, fed out a lot of fucking interesting stories from brawls and threats and death threats and all this sort of crazy shit. So I was like, not today. Not today. I don't want to deal with it. So I messaged the dude. I'm like, hey, bro, we're not going to be able to do this show because made up some bullshit excuse that we hadn't sold enough tickets for our show. And then he comes back. He's like, I was going to say Uso. Fuck it, I'll say Uso. He's like, Oos, it's all good. Don't worry. We'll give you more money. So he keeps coming back. And I'm like, nah, we can't, man. He's like, $4,000. I'm like, nah, can't. He's like, $5,000. I'm like, brother, we're like, no, there's no amount of money that's gonna make this happen. He's like, $6,000. I was like, fuck, that's a lot of money. So then I'm like, all right, we'll do it. And I was like, saying to my artist, I'm like, I'm not dealing with this shit. I'm not getting involved in this shit. Like, this is your life. You can go get the money off this dude. You can take the cut. I don't want a fucking clip from it. This is all yours. He's like, yeah, all right, sweet. Land in New Zealand. We go do a bunch of media and like radio and shit like that. And then as I'm going along, I keep mentioning, oh, we got the show at this other place and this is the guy. And like, people knew who he was. And everyone's like, no, he's a good lad, rah, rah. So my sort of walls are starting to break down. And then they're like, where is it? I'm like, oh, it's in Queen Street. We got to go meet at the studio to pick up this cash. And I'm not going, just the artist is. And then they're like, oh, it could be this, and like it's a music studio maybe. And then the guys kept saying, yeah, I think it's this one on Queen Street. So then as the day goes along, I'm like, okay, well, it can't be that bad. Everyone's vouched for this dude. And then second to that, it's just a fucking music studio. I've been in music studios millions of times. Boy, was I wrong. So I decided last minute, I'm like, fuck it, I'll go. So we walk up to this place to go collect this cash off this guy. And I get to what I think is a music studio. It's not. It's like a corner store in there, New Zealand, at the top in the CBD. And I text him, and then he's like, yeah, I'll come out and get you. So he comes out of a milk bar, and this guy's got like a 1% tattoo on his face, and he's like exactly how you'd imagine a New Zealand gang member. And he's like, come through. So we walk through this milk bar, and we walk past this Asian lady and whatever. She doesn't even like bat an eyelid. And then between the drink fridges, there's a door. So he opens his door up, and we walk in, and I walk into what I can only describe as a biking clubhouse. Like that's what it looked like. It had like paraphernalia, like memorabilia and stuff like that.
Like club merch and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, had all the club stuff all hanging on the walls. And we get in there, and I drop my fucking guts, bro. Like I've never been so scared in my whole entire life. Like you can imagine, there's like 8 or 9 guys in there. They're all patched up fucking gang members for like a really notorious gang in New Zealand. Tattoos on their face, and they're triple the size of me. And I'm just like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Like I'm want to run. And I literally wanted to run. I literally considered turning around and running out of the door at that point, but I did it, right? So I'm sitting there, and people were popping out looking at us because the artist I was with was relatively famous in New Zealand. So people were looking at him, but I'm thinking they're looking at us because they're going to kill us. Like we're going to get jumped. I'm thinking this is a setup. So straight away, I go, oh, I'm fucking starving. Like that first thing I say, and my mate's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I might get something to eat. He's like, oh, no, we'll do this meeting. I'm like, I reckon, I gotta get something to eat. So I'm trying to like exit and figure out a way to get out of this place. And then this big guy comes out. I can't say his name, but he's fucking humongous. He's like 6'7". And then I get introduced to him. And then he keeps saying, oh, we'll have a meeting in the back room. And I'm like, I don't want to go in this back room. Like I'm like in this hidden little place in the CBD. I'm like, I do not want to go in this back room. So I'm like, keep mentioning how hungry I am. Might go get something to eat before I come in. I'm just planning on running. Like that's what I'm planning on doing. Eventually gets too much, and then I don't have a choice. So I'm literally in my head, I'm like, okay, we're going to go into this room and get murdered. Like that's generally what I think. So I'm like, fuck it. Just think in my head, I'm like, nothing I can do. Just like, start calming down. I'm ready to be killed. So I walk into this room with this giant guy and this other dude who brings us in there. And we sit down in like a table, which is like kind of fucking Sons of Anarchy vibes at the back where there's no exit and rah, rah. And I'm shitting my pants. I can't imagine what it looked like. I reckon it looked like a tomato or a beetroot. And so this guy's sitting there, and I'm like waiting to get killed. And he goes, how are you? I'm like, yeah, good, bro. Like, what's going on? And he basically goes, just wanted to ask you a few things. And I'm like, fuck, you're kidding. And he's like, what speed rails do you use at your club? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, speed rails, like when you put your bottles and stuff, like what do you use? And he's like, I just bought a nightclub. I know you do nightclubs and shit. I just wanted to talk to you about like nightclub functionality. So I sit there with this fucking gang leader for like 15 minutes talking about like what guards you could use, what point of sales you use, what's the quickest way to fucking pour vodka drink so you can make more money. And then I realized that he's completely genuine. He just wants to take care of me. And then anyway, he passes over the $6,000 cash, and it's in a wad of 20s. I've actually got a photo on my phone of the artist holding it like a phone. And he passes it over. He's like, oh, count it if you want. I was like, I don't have a fucking death wish. So I was like, nah, bro, I trust you. And then straight away I flicked the money over to the artist because I'm like, fuck you. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And he just swiped it back at me, and I'm like, oh. And I don't want to be rude. I can't swipe the fucking $6,000 and $20 notes back over to him. So then we're talking, and then eventually I'm like, bro, I'm so hungry. Like, I'd love to sit here and chat all day. Lie. But I'd love to sit here and chat all day, but I've got to eat. So we get up, and we're leaving. We have to walk out of the space, and I go to walk out the door, and then as I do, he calls me over, and I'm like, this is it. This is the point where I'm about to eat a lead through the fucking forehead. And he goes, Danny, come here. I walk up, and I'm like, okay, it's all over. And he basically goes into his pocket, right? So I'm shitting myself. I'm going, uh-oh. And he pulls out a wad of cash, about $700-800. And he goes, brother, you hungry? I was like, yeah, you want to come? You want to come eat with us? I'm just trying to get out of this building because I'm shitting my pants. And then he's like, I don't want you touching your wallet when you're here. He's like, you're my guest. He's like, go get some lobsters, go get some champagne, take this money. And I'm like, dude, I can't take that much money. Like, it's too much money. And he's like, no, I insist. I'm like, bro, I appreciate it, but I literally can't take this money. And then he's like, no, I'm telling you, you're taking this money. I don't want you to touch your wallet. I was like, I'll take your money. So I take the money. I go next door, eat some dumplings, probably like 2 because I was still shitting myself. And then in the most fucking glorious way to leave that situation, I jump on like a Lime scooter and ride all the way back to my hotel room. But that was the beginning. And then obviously that next part happened where another gang, not to do with them, had nothing to do with them, but another gang attacked the clubhouse. And then what's even crazier is that gang came in to help us, which I've never actually told in that story. And they came in at the end and picked someone up on a bike and then hid someone. It was wild, bro. Like I was juggling 3 different gangs and the New Zealand police in a period of like 7 hours. And I don't know how, but I got out of it alive.
Crazy. So obviously you've ran a lot of events. How did you move from events into a festival? So events obviously typically normally anywhere from like 500 to 1,500 people, then going, I'm going to do a 10,000 person festival. What was that jump like?
Slow. Like it wasn't like that quick. It sounds a lot more glorious when you say it that way, but it was sort of, 200 people shows, 500 people shows, 1,000 people shows, 2,000 in club shows. And then I shut down Burke Street a few times. I think like 4 or 5 times with the crew. And we did raves on Burke Street on New Year's Day. So that was like 4,000. And then I shut down Cryle Castle. I was the last person to do that since the raves. So I shut down Cryle Castle and I did an Oktoberfest there with Shannon Knoll, which I did like 5,000 people. So I kind of gradually, and that one was a while. Like I lived in that castle for like 5 days, man. Like it was fucking insane being there. But second to that, it was just, I did everything wrong. Like I couldn't have done everything. Everything you could do wrong, I did wrong. It was like a crash course in events management. But I literally had to move 150 kegs. And you'd think that wouldn't take that long, right? Like that's what I thought. To a castle. I was wrong. It took me about 48 hours. Like, and we were literally, I'm talking like midnight, we're like kicking and moving these kegs along a castle and there's no flat because it's all bumpy and shit for it's a castle. So I did that and then made the mistakes. Like everything I've ever learned has been from losses or like all fucking up. Not enough bartenders, this, that, whatever. Bit of a disaster. Police ended up banning us from doing another event because there was an incident at the end, which I don't want to go into because I don't want to be linked to it. But anyway, so there's I did that one and then I did the Food Truck Carnival, which is something that people probably don't know I did, but I ran the biggest food event ever in the Southern Hemisphere. And then it went on to become the biggest touring food show in the Southern Hemisphere. I did that for like 3 years, but it was like the peak of food trucks. I was literally eating at a food truck one day and I was like, fuck, imagine if you could eat like 30 of these. And then I was like, the way I am, you know what I'm like, I just pulled the trigger and I went and contacted 30 food trucks and I found a space and I built a bar and I did this food truck event and I think we did 55,000 people in the first weekend and basically completely shut down the town it was in. It was where I live, Berwick. And it was a wild sort of a monumental event and no one really seen that. And we had bands, cheerleading competitions, this whole thing. And I just had a daughter. So I was sort of trying to figure out how to transition away from dance music. So that was like one of my first kind of experiments. So I did that. And that was like, we actually had to build cities. So we were moving around. I built a bus out of an older American school bus. I turned that into like a bar that you could pour beers out of. You could stack that up with all the bar infrastructure. I had a cage in there so we could count cash. We literally like fucking carnies used to jump in that thing and drive around state to state to town to like Ballarat, Bendigo, whatever. And we'd run these shows from anywhere from 15 to 40,000 people. And that was a very interesting time of my life. Like it was pretty wild. I didn't have a lot of time at home as you can remember. And living in this fucking, basically these little shitty towns in a school bus. And I did that. So again, what could go wrong did go wrong. We had generators blow up. We didn't have permits. There was a sacred butterfly that the council didn't want us to put a food truck over the top of. So I had to work that out and deal with that. So then when it came to time to do a large scale 10,000 person festival, it was pretty easy. I'd made all the mistakes and I figured out how to do it. So it was a long journey, but it was sort of like an overnight success is probably the term that people use, but over a 10-year journey. So I did them small baby steps, fuck up. And then eventually I got to a point where I'd made a bigger fuck up and lost $200,000. Yeah. And then I eventually figured out how to do it better and better. And that's, I think, is the story of my life, is like lose to you win.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people people that know you would know that story, but the evolution from running club nights and then your own events that kind of scale up to kind of 4,000 or 5,000 people. Then you did the Food Truck Carnival, which on a weekend did 55,000 people. Crazy. It was a free event, but learning. What was the difference between rolling up to a venue and just having to get people there to actually having to do absolutely everything? Like, I think a lot of people don't understand what actually goes into putting an event on. They think like you just roll up and these things kind of are just there. But like talk about all the stuff that you have to do prior to putting on one of these large scale events.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't get it. Like when you go into a venue, it's set up. So it's what you basically walk in and you might add some extra production, which is like lighting or flames or fucking lasers or whatever. That's it. And then you take the door. So there, it's $20 to get in. You do 1,000 people. You take that $20K. You pay the DJs. You pay the door girls. You keep the rest. Like that's basically the industry. They keep the bar. Sometimes if they're not doing that well, you're able to squeeze the percentage out of them. But it's another story for another day. I think the best I've got was 20% out of a venue, but that was because the guy was selling bulk narcotics out of his office. He didn't give a fuck about the bar. But anyway, if you Google that, that'll come up and you'll probably be able to guess what venue that is. But where that is how it works. So, but when you go to a space effectively to run a festival, it's what we call evergreen. So it's an evergreen festival, which is a paddock. It means that it's got no power, it's got no water, it's got nothing. It's just a blank.
No toilets.
No toilet. It's just a blank canvas. So from there, you've got to basically work out what you're going to do. So you put together the maps, how's this going to function. Use sort of like a guide that sort of tells you like, I think it's 1 toilet per 100 people, how many people can be in that space, how many exits you got to have. It's sort of like, it's effectively like a government document that you've got to learn back to front. It's called a POPE. And then you've got to abide by all those rules, but you've got to like use common sense to build at the same time. So you bump in to a site, you basically build a town. So you build your plumbing at the start, you build your electricity map, then you build your toilets, your infrastructure, your food, everything around it. So you got to build a city, but you got to basically abide by the same permits as if you build a house. And you got to get things engineered to make sure that they're like right, which costs money. If you want to build an entrance for people to come in, you have to have that engineered. That comes at a cost. That's got to be signed off. So you work through that for a long period of time. Then you've also got to understand marketing. You got to be able to create brands. You got to book a lineup and artists. You've got to get the right lineup and artists. You've got to be out for the space that you've got. You've also got to pay for these evergreen spaces because traditionally you've got to pay the people to rent the space, but it's not just the one day. You've got 3 days to bump in, 2 days out. So it's a full week and it could be 50 grand a day. Like that's how expensive these evergreen spaces can be. So you're spending months and months and months and you've got multiple teams. You got a team on the ground who are building the actual site. You got a team on the ground who are doing all the permits and shit because that's a full-time thing. Then you got the people who are doing the marketing. You got the guys who are running the ads. You got the person who's booking the lineup. Like it's a full fucking exercise. And then you got to try to all come together and try and pull this giant monumental thing off. But to give you an idea, our events were like 1.5 to 1.6 million for 10,000 people. So people whinge and they're like, oh, you make all this money off the bar or whatever because drinks are 15 to 16 bucks. But the reality of it is that you're not paying for the drink. You're paying for the toilets, the electricity, the plumbing, the band, the music, the lighting, like security, all these legislations and laws. And like back in the day, things were cheaper because those legislations and law were lower and they weren't as like kind of hectic, I guess. So you had less guards, you could do less toilets, you could not pay for as much stuff. You didn't need as many permits, you didn't need as much fencing, so all these things come at a cost. So basically, in short, winding that around is like those kind of core costs go up, everything else has to go up, and that's drinks and whatnot. But like, there's better ways to lose money. Like running a festival, if you're doing it to make money, and people always like, these guys must be making millions. I know more broke fucking festival owners than I've met millionaire festival owners. I know like 1 or 2, like rich festival owners. I know fucking hundreds of broke ones. Yeah, like most people that run a festival go broke. So you got to be passionate, and that's what you got to do it for. It's a lot of work without a lot of reward, and even if you do win, you're an outlier. Like that's the thing. So it kind of pisses me off, which people would know when people rag on festival owners, because I'm like, well, fuck you. Like these guys are putting their house on the line, quite literally putting their houses on the line to run this festival for you because they love the industry and they love people having fun, and you're going to shit on them because drinks are $2 extra than they are at a pub. You know, like it's not feasible anymore. Like running festivals, in my opinion, is not feasible. That's why they're all falling over. That's why you're not seeing as many anymore because artist prices are lifting. The dollar's getting worse. Infrastructure and the permits are getting harder, which means that you got to bring in more resource and it costs you more. It's an impossible place, and I actually don't even know if they'll exist in the next 10 years. I think they will, but I don't know. Like there'll be few and far between.
So obviously you've done all these events and then moved into festivals. You've had a lot of wins, but talk about a couple of losses that's like really stuck with you, because I think social media, everyone wants to share their wins. You always see the highlights, but a lot of people don't really. And I think that's what you've been good at, is like why you're so authentic, because you just tell the truth. And there's no festival owners out there coming out and being like, we're fucked. Like we've got these rising costs, we've got this, we've got whatever. But you've kind of the first guy that's kind of unveiled the curtain and been like, this is why it's happening. So like talk about obviously some of the highs, but what's some of the like biggest losses that you've had to take by trying to put on these large scale events for people?
So my first one, which I said before, where I went in to do a 10,000 person festival, but made probably the biggest mistake was we ran Hello Sunshine for the first year and we lost $400,000. So we did that, and I remember being at the back with my business partner, Kieran Dole, who's one of the guys that was just left Lucky, and we were like, yes, we only lost 200,000. And we were like high fiving. You know, like that's like the reality of what it was. We were celebrating a 200,000 per loss, but then things were wrong. Like their budget was wrong. The guy who was doing the accounting stuff had forgotten to add stuff in, and invoices came in late and and it blew out to 400 grand. That's a super common story with festivals. That hurt. You know, like that. I actually remortgaged my house quite literally to raise the capital for that event, and I lost it all. So we're 3 years into that now. The first year we lost money. The next year we lost a little bit, not too much. Third year it didn't connect, and obviously the festival market's pretty fucked, and we had to close. And then we were going to do a show in Queensland at Hoda. Cyclone came through, fucked us over. Obviously we couldn't get access to funding because they don't give a fuck. The government doesn't care about it. So we basically sitting there holding their dick, and we've copped that brunt, and we've lost that whole pool that we originally put in. So I myself has lost over $200,000 from that event alone. I'm stupid enough that I'm trying to figure out a way to continue that, which is probably dumb, but it's probably no surprise to anyone who knows me. But that hurt a lot. You know, like we've had to change our lifestyle, myself and my wife. I was always pretty plush with cash, and now I'm not, because I've got two businesses, one that is got a gaping hole in it, the other one that's growing so quickly, 80 proof, that I'm just constantly not being able to take anything out of it. So even though like on paper I'm probably the richest I've ever been, I'm actually the poorest I've ever been. And that's because of this giant loss. But would I change it? Wouldn't change it for the world, because I fucking love music. My kids got to meet Amy Shark. They got to meet Veronica's. They got to stand side of stage. I love this shit. Like I generally do, and I'm an idiot, but I wouldn't change it. Even if I never get that money back, I don't give a fuck. I pay for the most expensive ticket. Another one was, again, a show that I did, and it's funny because it reminded me from the quote I just said. I did a show in Bundalong in Australia, Victoria, top of like near the Murray, with Shannon Knoll, and it was called BBQ, one of my harebrained ideas. So I did a show there where it was like a craft beer / barbecue festival, and I had Shannon Knoll as a headline, a bunch of other shit. It was a fucking sick day. You were there. And then I ran that show, but I did a deal with the venue, and this is just like a normal mistake. These things happen so often. And basically the guy knew better than I did. So he was like, we'll take our bar, you take the craft bar, and then you take the tickets. And I was like, yeah, sweet, good deal, right? He didn't do anything wrong. That was the way we cut it to help with our costs and whatnot. What I didn't think about was that when there was Carlton Draft and fucking Bundy on tap, that every single person there was going to drink that. So my bar did a very small amount of money. I believe the guy did really, really well. And then with the tickets, we fell short. And I didn't lose stupid amounts. It wasn't that massive. It was like 10 grand or whatever. And like I've lost 10 to 20K on shows fucking 100 times probably. But this one here was just because it was a deal thing. Like if we'd actually pulled it together and did whatever, I'm definitely not calling the guy, he didn't do anything wrong, but it was like, I just cut the wrong deal because I didn't know what to do. If I'd shaped that again, I would have done something different. But I remember watching Shannon Knoll. It was Australia Day, and he was playing Great Southern Land. I'm with all my fucking best mates. Got my daughter in hand, and I'm just having the best time of my life. And I woke up the next day, and I knew I lost 10K, and I was like, you know what? I just paid for the most expensive ticket, but I had the best time. You know, like that's my outlook, which is stupid. I know you know I'm like that, but I just wouldn't change for the world. Like I don't care about losing. Like I'm not motivated by cash. Like that's just a byproduct. It can be suck when you don't have a lot of it, but I don't give a fuck, man. Give me experiences every day of the week.
Yeah. And put it into context, because let's say the first two Hello Sunshines, for anyone that was there, they probably would have been like, you must have made a fortune today. So I think the first one, correct me if I'm wrong, did about 8,000 people.
Oh, plus.
Plus. Yeah. And then the second one did 10,000 plus.
I think it was like 11,000.
And both lost money.
Correct.
So if you're at home and you're a punter, you're going to these festivals and you think, fuck, this is busy. Like it takes so much. Like what was the break even on those festivals? How many people would you have had to do to break even?
I really like what we hit on the second year, which is 11,000, should have been break even. But things go wrong. Like that's the thing. You're in an ever evolving situation where something breaks down or something blows up, or you don't have a choice. You can't just go, fuck, the generator's not working, we'll get one on Monday. You got to do it right then, right there. So if someone goes, oh, it's going to be $4,000 to get it there, guess what? You got to pay $4,000 to get it there. Like, and I've done it before. I'm like in my car, like 150 Ks down the fucking highway at Kennards, chuck it on, and like running back to try and get the generator going so we can get the stage up for the first band. But so because of that, it blew out, and it was not a whole lot. But that 11 to 12,000 is what we needed. And to actually make money off it, we needed 15,000. So we're growing. And it's like the show that we did in Melbourne was actually probably going to break even. But the one in Gold Coast, which is a new city, just was so far off it. So that's why we had to cancel. So it wasn't even that show that got us, yeah, it's just it's a wild thing. And, obviously it pisses me off when people get angry at it, but it's like to do shows, like there's shows out there that do 20, 30,000 that don't make money. And people would just be like, these guys are killing it, but they're just not. Like they're just not making any money. Unless the government supports you these days, you can't make cash.
That's what I mean. And like thinking about the mentality of someone like in this industry and why a lot of these festivals go broke, they literally have to do 12,000 tickets, 12,000 sales to break even.
Oh, this is
just to not lose money.
This is another part too. It's relying on the bar. So if it rains, you're fucked.
Exactly. So that's the mentality that and the risk that these guys are going to put these things on. And like people think these guys must be making a killing. Like majority of these guys that do it because they absolutely love it. And if they make money at the end of the day, obviously no one goes to lose money. If they make money, awesome. But the risk that they take on with these events is astronomical. Like for a normal person to comprehend and be like, you have to sell 11,000 of these at $150, they would be like, I'm never doing that business ever.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to lose everything.
You got to be crazy. And the reason why I think that most people who do this job are fucking insane is because of that. Like you got to be insanely passionate. You got to be a little bit left to center. And that's why I believe like my platform is so interesting to people is because I talk to all these people who are fucking insane, like myself, because only an insane person would do something like that.
I think a lot of people obviously look at social media and like I said before, they always see kind of the wins that people post all the time and all the things that you've done. Obviously, I've known you for like over 10 years now. Like, what do you think has separated you against like what separates you from like the normal Aussie bloke out there versus what you do? Because I'm sure a lot of people out there look at you and be like, this guy lives an absolute amazing lifestyle. I wish I could live like a quarter of the life that he lives. What do you think separates yourself versus just your average kind of Joe sitting at home?
Mental illness. No, probably a little bit of that. But I'd say I'm never afraid to say yes. Yeah, like I'm more afraid to say no than I am to say yes. So you know what I'm like, man. Like if we're out and someone's like, "Do you want to jump off this bridge? It's 30 meters." I'm the first to be like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then I get everyone around, I rally them around, and we do the wild shit. Like I'm more scared not to live than I am scared to live, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically the way I live my life is it's 100 miles an hour, but like I'm going to die. Like I lost one of my best friends, which I've talked about in this pod before. He passed away at 28. And that was a real kind of like moment to me where I generally did believe, I know it sounds wild, but I didn't think I was going to live past 28 myself. Once I did, I was like, okay, well, fuck. Like we've only got a certain time on this earth, Like I'm like, I might as well live this to the fullest. And like one of my goals in life is that when I die, and I think it's already there. If I die tomorrow, I reckon that if they do that little visual thing at the funeral where it comes up and it shows all the stuff I've done, people are going to be like, is this real? Like, is this fake? Like, there's no way this guy could have done that. I've already done that now, but I've got another, hopefully 30, 40 years to go. So I'm just trying to create the greatest book that was never written, like the greatest story ever told that was never told until recently. But I'm just always saying yes. Like that's the difference between me and I don't give a fuck if I lose because I'd rather the yarn than the cash per se. But I'm just a risk taker. Like I just love risk. Some people hate it. They're conservative. I'm the opposite. Like give me risk every single day of the week.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they always wait for that perfect moment. There's a lot of people out there that are like, I want to do something else. Maybe I'm not enjoying it. Obviously knowing you since I was probably 20, I'm now 31. The amount of things that you've done in that period of time and like you haven't won at all of them. But it's like the power of consistency over a long period of time that you just kept cracking in. And it's like, even if something's failed and you're just like, it didn't work, bang, move on to the next one. Whereas someone's like, someone normal would be like, oh, it's fucked. I'm not doing that again. Whereas you do it 10 times over until it works. So I think just a good lesson in there is like, for those people at home is just to keep having a go because inevitably the more you say yes and the more risk that you take, inevitably something has to give and something has to pay off. So what's like one thing, like all these things that have kind of led you into all these different business ventures, what has been the most rewarding thing that you've done in terms of like your business career where it's kind of just happened?
Oh man, all of it, man. Like I look back at different times, but it's like, like almost gonna half get emotional about it, but like helping people build their dreams, like that's been awesome. A lot of people have worked for me, including yourself, and they've gone on to become successful business guys. I love that. Like, so I've had guys like Danny Rants who went on to do Cloud9, I worked with Kyle who went on to do hardware, Mango that runs Turbo and stuff now, yourself, there's Carlo Paduano, like the amount of people that have worked under me and that have gone on to be successful business guys. Second to that, artists that have worked with me that have gone on to like live their lives and travel overseas, travel over the world, have families and do whatever. Being able to be that like guy that is able to create this because of my crazy personality is so fucking rewarding, right? That's one part. And I've got so many great relationships. I'm very, very lucky that not a lot of people hate me. Like maybe I'm wrong, but like the people who work for me, I don't really have anybody that used to work for me that doesn't like me or I don't still see. Like I'm very good at keeping relationships, as you know. Being able to be their launching pad or convincing people like you at 19 years old to not get a job and stay with me, even though it's completely wild. And no doubt all your family and friends are saying, don't do that. And then teach you the ways of what I lived, and that risk is not the scariest thing. Like not taking the risk is more scary. And then watching you guys succeed, very rewarding. Second to that is like having my own family now. Like I went through my woes, my ebbs and my flows, as I said earlier. I've got my wife now, my beautiful wife, and I've got my 2 daughters. But like so Hello Sunshine was like a pivotal part of that. Like when I took my kids and they were able to watch artists that they love and listen to on the radio and in front of 10,000 people, like that's something I'll never ever forget. Like that is like the most amazing moment in my whole entire life. And if I die tomorrow, I'd die happy, So like that is probably the most amazing thing. And like with working in nightclubs and just the chaoticness and the randomness of it, it's like, I don't know, man, it just feeds my soul. Like it doesn't matter if it's someone getting glassed or, a DJ blowing up and now they're going to go travel around the world and sell festivals out or whatever. It's like being able to like watch these people, good and bad and ugly. For me, it's like, I love chaos, and being involved in that, it just fed my soul, good and bad.
Yeah. And, most people are in business and their careers for, the fancy cars, nice watches, all these kind of perks. Obviously, your motivation is way outside of that with all the things that you do. What like wakes you up in the morning and what motivates you to like do all this crazy stuff?
To be honest, I reckon it's just like the yarn. Yeah, like, which is, well, it's true, but it's like, for me, I'm like, win, lose or draw, as long as I can eat. Like, that's what I really give a fuck about. I've eaten sausages for dinner 7 days a week when I was a kid. I don't need fancy shoes. Like, I don't need shit, and I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't wear brand name stuff per se. I don't have a lot of toys. Like, my family always comes first, but it's like, for me, it's like, I don't know. I just always, like, I'll see stuff happen, and it will come up. Like, the rodeo, the boxing event that I just did, and I'll just look at it and go, fuck, like that'd be a sick yarn. So even when I'm creating a story and building it, it's like, can I? Like, it's almost like, can I do this? I want to break through these challenges to see if what I think is possible to sort of like prove myself wrong that I can't do something. And then the second part of it is just the story. Like I'm like, as I said, I want to have the greatest story never told, like, and I think I'm doing that really successfully, but like the money is like a byproduct, which is awesome. And it may add to the story. Like maybe there's an arc where I sell a business for millions and millions of dollars. Like I think that is probably hopefully likely to happen. But that's just another part of this crazy story that I'm trying to build. And I generally, what wakes me up and motivates me every day is like, okay, what's my next chapter? And my next chapter can be anything. Like it could be you going to ride a rodeo cow, you're going to fucking fight in front of 5,000 people for boxing, you're going to learn how to cave dive in Mexico, like all these things, dive with great white sharks, all these things that I've done. Then it's just like, what's the next chapter look like? And sometimes because of that, my life's been successful.
Mostly like 90% of the stuff that we've spoken about today, people probably wouldn't know, but that was before you'd even started posting on social media. So you've only been posting on social media for like the last year properly.
Yeah, 14 months, I reckon.
What made you want to even start down this path? Like what got you started just even posting?
So I basically had posted shit like memes and stuff and jokes and whatnot prior, but it was more just like for fun, like a bit of a hobby. But what actually made me decide to start posting online, because I only had like 1,000 followers or 1,200 followers, like fuck all. And I was obviously working in these circles, living these crazy stories, hence why I say the crazy story never told. And I had no intention to tell it. Like that wasn't a part of my plan. And then I started working with guys like Troy Candy and Adrian Patali, and then I was working with the Grog guys and working with all these different influencers, and we were running their businesses with them or for them. And I was watching them do these online launches, which you were involved in, and they were doing like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was like, fuck. And I've been knocking around with these types my whole entire life. And I'm like, no offense to these guys, but they're no more interesting than I am. Like if anything, I probably would say that they would agree that I'm more interested in some of these people, like not the guys I'm working with, but other influencers and whatnot. And I always got along with them, and I was like, I could do this, and I could see that monetary value, and that this might help my family down the track. So I started off originally doing like comedy reels. I did pretty well, like believe it or not, and I don't think anyone would even know, but I did like probably 5 months of it. I accumulated millions and millions of views. I had multiple videos go viral. My biggest video ever, still to this day, was actually one of my comedy reels. It was like kind of like a joke that I was doing about my wife asking me to drive home after a party. And again, I never ever got noticed for it, so no one ever knew, but I probably accumulated even before I started to post properly with the Danny Rants sort of concept. I probably did 15 to 20 million views. So I was already good in front of the camera because I'd been trying it. Prior to that, during COVID, which I was a bit of a boomer, didn't understand it, but I was locked in my house, obviously didn't have a job because we closed down, the world had closed down and my clubs had closed down. And I started up this thing called Doomsday Danny, which is actually the same profile I have now. And it was just me taking the absolute piss out of being locked up and taking the piss out of like general conversation that was going on in COVID. But it was stories, so it was never reels, and I didn't understand if I'd done that earlier, I probably would have had a lot more success. But a lot of people were coming over there to watch that. I guess I had a lot of time on their hands, and I was just like doing all kinds of wild and crazy shit, like always. And then did the comedy stuff, and then I sort of stopped, and there was no real reason. I was just kind of got over it, like, which is not uncommon for me. And then I was sitting, it was January 2024, and I was sitting in my office telling yarns like I always do to a young girl that was working with me, a girl called Chrissy Doan. And I was telling her stories about fucking, doing Dom Dollar, the first show, or how he did X, Y, Z. And I was talking about stories about this guy pulling a gun out on this person, or this person bleeding out on the pavement, or getting bashed by security guards, or all this sort of stuff. And then I was like, and I'd just tell her. So we'd sit there and I'd do story time. Everyone who knows me knows what I'm like. Even when people see me in real life now, they find it so weird that I'll just go into a rant or story. Like, that's my thing. So I started telling her all these yarns, and she was like, oh, TikTok just started this thing where you can do 10-minute videos. You should tell these stories online. And I'm like, no one's gonna give a fuck about this. Because I've told all these yarns to my mates, and my mates are like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, I generally believe no one cared. Like, they've convinced me. And I was like, oh, maybe. And then I was like, fuck, nah. And then she's like, nah, just do it. And she's like, just do like 5. I was like, all right. So I was like, fuck it. So I literally got a couch in my house. It was like a grey one. For people that watch my stuff, they remember it. And I just put it on a chair with a pillow, and I just started telling yarns to these things. And I did 5. And I think on the 3rd day, I did like 5 million views. And then I was like, what the fuck? Because TikTok was pushing that platform. And I became the biggest long form creator on TikTok at that time because no one did it apart from me, probably for 2024. And it was just, then it sort of got momentum. But then I was like, okay, because I'd sort of done the reps, I guess, beforehand. I was like, cool, I'm just going to stay consistent. So I posted every day for 3 months, and then it blew up. I did tens and tens of millions of views. But what made me post originally was the monetary thing, but now it's funny because I don't do any of that. Like, I fund this podcast myself. I make fucking no money from this. And but I just sort of did it, and I saw people loving it, and they were resonating, and it was like, I was like, this is sick. Like, I'm like, people actually do want to listen to my stories despite what my mates say. So I basically started to do that, and then it kind of like snowballed, like, and it's been a fucking wild journey since. And
like, since you've started posting like in the last 14 months, how has your life like changed? Like,
so I guess this is an interesting one. I actually had someone ask me this the other day, but I am in a weird world where I was behind the curtain, but everyone already knew who I was. So a lot of like Australian artists, not necessarily bands, but like electronic or rappers, they already knew who I was because I was in the same circles. A lot of influencers in different scenes, I guess, not their fitness niche because that wasn't really my thing, as you can probably tell by my double chin. But they already knew who I was. So I was already kind of in these circles of people that people would call famous. So I was getting red carpet treatment. I was getting free drinks. I was getting free tickets to whatever I wanted. I was getting free dinners. Like, things like this were already happening to me. So that part is probably not new to me. Like, and if you were someone who kind of blew up overnight to get that, I'm sure that would be pretty crazy, right? The thing for me is that people noticing me, man. Like, it's like wherever I go, people stop me. You've been out with me. Like, it doesn't matter if we're at a random kebab shop it doesn't matter if we're at Kmart, like wherever I am, office works, people will stop me and take a photo and stuff like that. So that part was weird, and it took a while to get used to. But then second to that is the experience that have come with it. So I've like, the other day, Danny Green, who's a boxer, like someone who's amazing to me, but like so regular now, I'll meet these famous people and they're like, Danny, they know who I am. And I'm like, what? How do these famous people know who I am? Or they'll message me like, hey brother, I love your content. But that's been insane. So meeting people that I looked up to my whole entire life and they already know who I am is really cool. And then the last part to that is the experiences I've had. Like I mentioned probably a little bit before, but the Alpha Blokes, massive platform, humongous. I said to them, probably the best way to explain it is that I've always had these outrageous dreams and outrageous outlook. And I've got this quote where I say, make unrealistic goals with realistic steps, right? So prior to that, I could do that. But now I can just say whatever the fuck I want. I could literally, I reckon, say, I want to do a double backflip on a motorbike and someone will probably help me. Like it sounds wild, but it's true. So I literally said out loud that I wanted to ride a rodeo bull. The Alpha Blokes guys, I get up there to Gladstone. They take me out to a farm. There's like 7 pro rodeo riders. They teach me a crash course how to ride a rodeo on a rodeo farm. They let me ride a rodeo bull. They film this whole thing. And I'm like, that's insane. Like being able to do that, just being able to go, hey, can you help me ride a bull? And then have all these people kind of like get around me and make that happen is something that I'll never ever take for granted. It's insane. And it's been so cool to be able to make these things reality. And like the other one was the fight that I did, which you came up to. I fought in front of 5,000 people in Gold Coast. Like, dude, couldn't even be on my bucket list. Like I fought before back in the day, obviously, in small little 100 people halls. But to walk out to 5,000 people screaming, knowing who the fuck I am, like yelling my name and shit, I could never envision that could ever happen to me. Like I've just from posting on my phone, like I'm just a dude in my bedroom, chubby fucking dad, 2 kids, like I don't think that eventful life. Obviously people disagree, talking in my phone, like let's rant, and now I'm fighting in front of 5,000 people with people yelling out my name. Like doing those sort of things is like, it took me like 4 days to really properly process it. And even still to this point, I don't even know if it's true or not. Like I'm like, did I dream this? I'm waiting to like wake up and it's all fuzzy. I'm like, oh, what a weird dream. But that has been the coolest and craziest part is just that like whatever I can come up with, people want to help me facilitate, which is fucking insane. And then I guess the other part is like inspiring people, which I don't really get. Like I don't get it, but people come up to me all the time. They're like, you inspire me, you're a mentor, you're this, that, you're that. And I'm just like, I don't get how telling crazy stories about how I find shit scribbled on the female toilets in the nightclub inspires you, but I appreciate it. But yeah, that's been the best, probably the best part, but also it also comes with woes too,
So obviously there's a lot of pros that have come with, you starting posting on social media, all that kind of stuff. And you slightly touched on like some of the cons. Can you kind of just extrapolate that out a little bit for, people at home that probably might not understand what some of those cons might be?
One is like you don't really get any privacy, so people look at you a lot. They come up to you when you're eating, which is strange, but people will have a conversation. But most of the time it's in goodwill. Sometimes it's not. So I had an incident which actually kind of sucks, but it was actually a famous DJ in Australia, like well reputable. I don't know. He probably says he is, but he we're at a show at Listen Out, and he obviously we've not really got along because there's a lot of politics, which we can go into another time. In the industry. So there's people that work in different scenes. It's fucking like a bit of an elitist thing. Private school, public school, genres, rah, where we don't all get along. It's not all rainbows and lollipops in the music industry. So he was in another scene, thinks he's better than my scene. So they were sort of like bullying me, but I didn't know. Like I wasn't aware they were bullying me. And I was watching 21 Savage and this random dude just run up, jumped on my fucking back and then started to ride me. And I was like, what the fuck? Like this is so weird. But kind of looked over and I knew some of the guys in the group and I thought maybe it was just a weird coincidence. Wasn't. They were trying to take the piss out of me, posted online this DJ guy will remain nameless. And I sort of like had to take a stand, and which is a bit of a crazy yarn and I'll brush over it because it's fucking insane. But the guy eventually figured it out, made him apologize, wanted him to catch up with me in person. And I sort of did this tactic because I was like, I really wanted to like this is kind of him fucking crazy. I'm setting myself up like a psychopath, but it is what it is. We're putting it all out there. So this guy, I basically messaged him and said, you have to say sorry to me in person. And you jumped on my back unannounced and rah. So I convinced him to meet me in Richmond to say sorry. And I said, after you say sorry, I'm going to ride you. He was like, no, you're not going to do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to do that. So I convinced this guy that I was going to ride him. I get there, made him apologize. I was pretty fucking upset about it. And the reason why I went this far, and I know it's a little bit ridiculous, but I was like, I don't want this to be a thing because in my industry, like, people take the piss out of me because of what I'm doing. There's a lot of more people that support me, so I don't want to take anything away from that. But I really wanted to set a precedent of like, don't fuck with me is basically what I was trying to get to. So get there, the guy sort of apologizes, we sort of have our words, whatever. And then at the end of the conversation, I actually took a cowboy hat to the meetup. And then I say, all good, now turn around. And he's like, man, I'm not turning around. I'm like, no, you're going to turn around. So I put on the cowboy hat and I told him to turn around. And he turned around and then I didn't ride him because I've got more self-respect than that. I'm not a bully. And I basically said to him, now I know that you're a bully and a fucking coward. Never ever do this to me again because this is the real life repercussion if you want to pick on someone online, this is what can happen to you. So it's a bit of a crazy story. People are probably going to think I'm unhinged, but it is what it is. Sometimes drastic times call for drastic measures. So second to that, I had an incident where I posted a video and I'd mentioned something that I probably shouldn't have in their sort of MC criminal underworld. And then I got a call from a security guard friend of mine, and he was like, hey, I got a phone call from a outlaw motorcycle gang questioning who you are. And he's like, my dad and myself have vouched for you, but they're not really happy about like what's going on. And I was like, fuck, man, like this is not a call that I want to have. So we had to kind of negotiate that in the background. And we moved past it, fortunately, but that was sort of a little bit of a negative thing too, because, you know, with good attention comes bad attention. But I would say with good attention is 99%. It's only the 1% that's bad. And most people come up to me, it's in goodwill, and I fucking love chatting to them. It's just those 1%ers that are fuckheads. So I'm going to say 2% so I don't get myself in trouble. The 2%ers, 1%ers, a lot of them are great people. They're really great people. But yeah, 2% of people can be fuckheads basically. So that's the negative that can come from it.
Danny, we've done 50 episodes. I reckon this deserves a round 2. You could tell yarns for days. So can we commit to at episode 100, we'll do this again. And I'm sure by that time, we're probably going to have 1,000 more wild stories. We haven't even scratched the surface today, but for the fans out there, will you commit to episode 2?
100%. I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface. I've got so many more crazy stories from outside my life, inside my life, in the industry, you know, like everything that's coming up, the stuff that's coming up that I know is going to be even more wild than the stuff I've done. And I'm going to continue to endeavor and promise you, I'm going to continue to do crazy shit, have crazy guests on, and extrapolate insane stories. So if you stick with me, I'll stick with you, and I'll commit to 100 episodes.
Perfect. Love it.
Legend, bro. Thank you so much.
Bye.